How was it to return to the role of Queen Gorgo after 7 years?
It was very nice to return. She's slightly older. And this time she holds a sword.
Zach told me that you had to fight.
Huh?
Zach said that you had to fight. That was your mandate. That you
Yeah. I was like, give me a fight. Come on. Because the last movie I kind of sat around while the boys did it all, and I'm a tomboy, so I was slightly jealous, It's like if someone came in the room in a ball gown, I'd be like, yeah, it's pretty, and then someone was like, I'm doing a big fight. I'd be like, I want to do that. So I did a little one.
How was it to play off of the first movie and to get into the script that Kurt crafted and Zach crafted that kind of sets up this parallel storyline? It's not really a sequel. It's taking place at around the same time.
Yeah, it's, slicing it in a different way. And, it was kind of interesting for me because you didn't really see the result of Gorgo losing Leonidas in the original. You kind of have the moment where David Wenham's character comes back and she finds out. But it was kind of nice to play this idealistic Spartan woman who, stood by her man and said no, and then things change after he is murdered, and she's sort of driven by the need to avenge his death.
I know you've been through it before, but tell me a little bit about finally getting to see a film that when you're actually there doing the work, a lot of it isn't there.
Yeah, it's always, I did feel like it didn't feel as odd this time walking on. I thought, we're in a green kind of bucket and there's half of everything, so they're going to paint. It's like the half world that you live in. And I guess, the original was bizarre to me because I'd never experienced anything like it, and it was just Zach kind of telling you where everything was going to be. And then this one, I thought, you know what? I know these guys, they got skills. It's going to happen.
I know that Zach particularly likes to make a point of anything that you or any of the actors can physically touch is usually real. And in this case, working with Alexandra, with the costumes, with the props guys, with Patrick in the art department, how does that help inform character when you're doing a role like this, when you can actually have the physical elements of your character at least close at hand?
Yeah, it's more emotional, I think in things like this when you connect to other actors, that's for me more of an anchor of where you are. In terms of the fights and all that, yes, the swords and the kind of weird half sword where you're like they're gonna add the real pointy bit later, that's a weird one because also you don't want to hit someone in the face, you know what I mean? You're like judging the distance. But yeah, all of those things help, but you have your it's kind of a green screen in your own head. You've got a kind of, your imagination has to take you to that little bit extra. Does that make any sense? I'm talking bananas now.
There's kind of two components to preparing for the fighting. There's the work that you do with Damon, actually rehearsing the choreography, but there's also time spent with Mark in the gym. Has any of that, have you carried any of that with you, any of Mark's philosophies?
Yeah, I don't think you can't, not once you've met Mark. He's a kind of measure of your own self, which is why I love him. And, he's just awesome to get to spend time with him. You're like, you just have to raise your own game in every way. But I don't carry it on, sadly. I do a little bit now and then, but it's obviously not 4 times a week, 2 hours a day, because you just, it's not sustainable. I just wrestle my son instead. It's like an hour's worth.
The character of Queen Gorgo obviously exists in real history. One thing that I think is beautiful about this film is that even though it took place 2,000 years ago, it feels very contemporary.
Yeah.
Why is this a contemporary story, even though it's rooted in some degree of history? Well,
I think, emotionally, historical period films need to be contemporary because it's that funny thing where you, you think in 1610, a guy who lost his son would scream and weep the same as a guy today who, you know, that carries us through whatever time period we're in. We're all human beings. I think that's the element. So, you know, if you're present and you're connected emotionally to your material, it should carry some impact and some contemporary feel.
It's also storytelling, right? I mean, it's in a way, it's a graphic novel. It's not,
Yeah.
We're not making a documentary. We're not telling history here. We're telling a tale, and it's an elevated tale that anybody
Yeah,
can
it's a
read.
hyper real, you know, fucking ride. So,
Have you been having fun now that it's done, seeing it on the screen?
yeah, I mean, it's, you know, my tolerance for violence has gone down since I've had a kid. I realize I can't horror, you know, I'm kind of like, just the noise. I think I spent a lot of it like this.
I think clearly they had a high sodium diet back then or something. Spurred a lot of blood.
Yes.
Possible.